So in 1979, the whole world was watching as a revolution absolutely toppled Iran's ruler. And with him, a monarchy that stretched back more than 2,500 years. Just think about that. This was a seismic shift, one that would reshape the Middle East forever. But here's the thing. This collapse, it felt sudden, but it wasn't really sudden at all. Nope. It was more like the final explosive act in a bitter, bitter rivalry that had been simmering for decades. A rivalry between two men who had completely different visions for Iran. So you have to ask, how did this happen, right? How did a king who seemed to have it all, the power, the Western backing, lose everything to a religious figure he'd banished years before? Okay, let's really get into it. To really wrap your head around the revolution, you first have to understand the two men at the very center of it all. You see, their conflict, which spanned decades, wasn't just some political squabble. It was the very engine that drove Iran toward its incredible destiny. So on one side, you had Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Persia's last emperor, a man absolutely determined to drag his country, kicking and screaming if he had to, into the 20th century. And on the other side, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, his fiercest opponent and the face of a really powerful religious opposition. The Shah reportedly developed what was almost an obsession with Khomeini, and this personal fight, it would ultimately seal the nation's fate. Now, these two guys weren't just political opponents. They were products of completely different worlds. And to see why they clashed so violently, you've really got to look at where they came from, how their two very different destinies were forged. The Shah, well, he was basically born into power. His father was this huge, charismatic, powerful figure who just completely dominated his life. He even sent him off to a Swiss boarding school to get a Western education. But then, during World War II, the Allies forced his father to abdicate, and suddenly the monarchy was, as one historian put it, thrust upon him. He was just 21 years old. So you see, he didn't seize power. He inherited it. He was, by all accounts, a pretty reluctant king at first. Khomeini's story could not have been more different. I mean, his father was murdered when he was only 5 months old, and for the rest of his life, Khomeini blamed the monarchy for protecting the killer. Growing up without a father, that shaped everything about him. He was this gifted student who, while other kids were out playing, just immersed himself in studying the Quran, all the while nursing this deep, personal grudge that would one day fuel a revolution. So, by the 1960s, the stage is set. The rivalry that's been simmering between these two men is about to just boil over and explode. And the spark? It was going to be the Shah's most ambitious project yet. In 1963, the Shah kicks off what he calls the White Revolution. It's this huge, sweeping program to modernize Iran, and fast. We're talking land reform that takes property from powerful feudal lords, and that included the clergy. It pushed for literacy, and this is crucial, it gave women the right to vote. For the Shah, this was progress, pure and simple. For Khomeini, it was a declaration of war. Khomeini's reaction was audacious. He completely dropped his quiet opposition and just openly attacked the Shah. He framed the reforms, especially women getting the right to vote, as a direct assault on Islam. And he sent this warning. I mean, can you imagine? It was an unbelievable personal challenge to the monarch's authority. And the Shah's response was just as venomous. He dismissed the clergy with absolute contempt. The political had become deeply, deeply personal. The battle lines were drawn. And it wasn't just about policy anymore. It was between two men who truly despised each other. So for the time being, the Shah won this round. He had Khomeini arrested and then kicked out of the country, exiled. But in doing so, he made this huge error, a mistake that would, in the end, cost him his throne. And from here, their paths just completely diverge. Khomeini spends the next 14 years in exile, but he isn't just sitting around. He's quietly studying, writing, and creating his master blueprint for an Islamic state. Meanwhile, the Shah, he gets more and more autocratic. He crowns himself king of kings, throws this insanely lavish party in the desert that costs a fortune, and unleashes his brutal secret police, the Savak, on anyone who opposes him. And right here is where the Shah made a massive miscalculation. See, he was terrified of communism, so he crushed all the secular and left-wing political groups. But he let the religious networks grow, build schools, build mosques, because he thought they were a safe, traditional defense. But in doing that, he accidentally made it so that only the clergy could organize any real opposition. So by the late 1970s, the whole country was just a powder keg of resentment. And all it needed was one tiny spark to ignite one of the fastest, most shocking revolutions in human history. And then, it all just happened in a flash. We're talking a matter of months. It starts with a newspaper article insulting Khomeini. Bam, protests erupt. Then a horrific fire in a cinema kills over 400 people, and the opposition immediately blames the Shah's secret police. That turns public anger into pure rage. Then came Black Friday. The military fired on protesters, and after that, there was just no turning back. The Shah, who was weakened by cancer and just couldn't seem to make a decision, he completely lost control. In January '79, he fled. 2 weeks later, Khomeini returned. This was the moment everyone knew it was over. Just before he left, the Shah gave this televised speech, and he looked, as one person said, absolutely despondent. He told the people he'd heard their revolutionary call and begged them for another chance. But they saw it for what it was. It was the ultimate sign of his weakness. Now, in stark contrast, you've got Khomeini. For a brief time, he's exiled to a suburb of Paris, and he becomes a master of political theater. He's catapulted into this international celebrity, giving over 100 interviews. And he was so clever, carefully hiding his truly radical vision of a theocracy. To the rest of the world, he put on a moderate, even a democratic face. And that was it. The rivalry that had defined Iran for decades was finally over. A 2,500-year-old tradition was about to be replaced by something the world had really never seen before. The Persian monarchy was finished. Done. Khomeini moved fast, outmaneuvering his secular and leftist allies to put his vision of an Islamic state into place. A year later, the Shah died of cancer in exile. And Khomeini? He would go on to rule Iran for 10 years, transforming it into the very theocracy he dreamed of during all those lonely years of exile. At the end of the day, this quote really says it all. The revolution was a clash of two opposing wills. And Khomeini's will to conquer power, which was fueled by a lifetime of grievance, was just, stronger than the Shah's will to keep it. Which really leaves us with one final big question. In these moments that defined nations, what is the more decisive force? Is it the relentless strength of those who want to seize power, or is it the fatal weakness of those who simply fail to hold on to it? It's a question that the story of the Shah and the Ayatollah really forces us to think about.